Welcome to the Positive Productivity Podcast, episode 196. Today's episode of the Positive Productivity Podcast is brought to you by the Positive Productivity Pod, created to empower entrepreneurs to achieve and appreciate personal and professional success without burnout. The pod offers weekly group coaching sessions, online courses, a private member community, and tons more. To learn more about the pod and to sign up, visit positiveproductivitypod.com. See you on the inside. The Positive Productivity Podcast was created to empower entrepreneurs to achieve and appreciate personal and professional success. I'm your host, Kim Sutton, and if you're ready, let's jump into today's episode. Welcome back to another episode of Positive Productivity. I'm so happy that you are here to join us today, and I am thrilled to welcome back our guest, Andy Molinksy. Andy and I tried recording about a month ago and only got one track, but as you know, on the Positive Productivity Podcast, it's not about perfection. Andy is a professor at Brandeis University and the author of Reach and Global Dexterity. Andy, welcome to the show. I'm so happy to be chatting with you again.
Well, thanks for having me. I enjoyed chatting with you the first time, and I'm excited to do it again.
It was awesome. Yeah. And sometimes the second recordings are really just making way and paving the way for something bigger and better. So I can't wait to see where this chat takes us. Andy, cool. Just because the listeners haven't had the honor through my podcast, at least, of hearing who you are, would you mind giving an introduction and telling more about what you do and how you got to where you are now?
Sure. I guess I kind of wear two hats. I'm a professor at Brandeis University in Boston in the International Business School and also in the psychology department. So I have a whole academic career. I write, academic papers and I teach and so on. But about, I might want to say 10 years ago, maybe 8 years ago or so, I started to really want to try to branch out beyond, just speaking to other academics and professors. And so I started writing for popular audiences. And I wrote my first book, Global Dexterity, about adapting and adjusting behavior across cultures. I started writing for the Harvard Business Review. I have a column at Inc.com. I write for Psychology Today. I wrote my second book, which came out this year, which is called Reach, about how to step outside your comfort zone in general in life, why it's hard, how we avoid it, and what you can do about it. And I have started working with individuals and in companies. And it's just been really fun to kind of stretch myself and try to reach a much broader audience. So I guess I mentioned two hats. That's my second hat.
How many hats do you think you wear?
I think just two. Two professional ones.
Okay. Yeah, that's actually what I was going to follow up with. I was going to say, Andy, there's no way you only wear two hats. I feel like some days I remember there was a children's book when I was growing up, but I'll have to find it for my kids about this guy I think he's trying to sell hats. I know I'm very descriptive audience, but I think he ends up having like 10,000 hats on. And some days that's just what it feels like as a mom, as a business owner. But that can actually very much lead into the topic of your book, Andy, about reaching outside the comfort zone, because I know one of the biggest things I had to do was reach out and build my team and trust team members to do the work that I was always doing. But also even just getting behind the microphone was scary, as you know what. What have been some of the biggest steps that you've taken ever and stepping outside of your comfort zone? And what type of results have you seen? I mean, I know you wrote your books. Can you provide any other examples?
Sure. Yeah. No, I think it's been, my whole life I've noticed, I don't think I'm unusual in this way, but I'm definitely reflective about my own experience. And I'm always kind of curious about the challenges that I face and what I can do about it. And, I think, at every phase I faced that. I remember in college, I was really scared to participate in class. I would sit in the back of the room with my heart kind of feeling like it was beating out of my chest, my face turning red. I might put up my hand for a second, but then, put it back down. And then the conversation would kind of go by me and I'd just get frustrated that, again, it happened. I couldn't get up the courage. And, that's just a little example. After college, I remember whether it was networking or public speaking, I remember I got a PhD, so part of the training was going to conferences and speaking in public. And I remember being really nervous speaking in public, and then of course teaching in front of 40, 50 people. That's a real performance. It's of course it's educational, but it's also a performance, and that just really scared me. I used to write out my talks, my speeches, and like literally read from a piece of paper, and so that was like a major crutch I had. And then at some point, I decided that I was looking around and not a lot of people were doing that. So I said, you know what, I got to ditch these notes. And then that was outside my comfort zone. So just at every phase, it's something that really I've struggled with, but it hasn't stopped me. You know what I mean? So that's what Reach is about. My book. It's about how to understand what's holding you back, what your pain points are in any situation where you're considering stepping outside your comfort zone, how you might be avoiding it. And we all do, and then what you can do about it.
What do you think are some of the biggest things that are holding people back from stepping outside of the comfort zone? Do you think it is that fear of the unknown, or do you think it's a pure comfortableness with where they are now, or a mix of both, or something completely different?
Well, I think the fear of the unknown in the fear of something that's uncertain is a big fear for people. Oftentimes, though, it's not completely unknown, right? So if your situation you're thinking about is networking or giving a speech or making small talk with someone you don't know and so on, it's probably not unknown. You've probably tried it or you have a decent idea about it, but it still might be terrifying for a variety of reasons. And that's what I kind of dug into in the book. And I found 5 different kind of core, I call them psychological challenges or roadblocks that people experience stepping outside their comfort zone. And, these might resonate with people listening. So for example, authenticity, like I'm afraid I won't feel like myself, that this isn't me. I'll feel like an imposter doing this, speaking in front of a group of people, or I don't know, I spoke to a lot of entrepreneurs as part of my, as part of my research, putting on my grown-up voice, speaking to venture capitalists, trying to raise money, whatever it might be. So authenticity is a big challenge. Another one is likability. The worry that people won't like this version of me. Remember, you're stepping outside your comfort zone. This isn't your typical way of acting. What if people hate you if you act more assertively than you usually do? If you really speak your mind, for example, that's a real worry people have. Another one is competence. What if you look like a fool giving a public speech or whatever it might be, or you're afraid you can't do it well, and you're also afraid others can see that you can't do it well. So there's like a public and a private side to that one. I also found resentment among some people. Now, logically, people get it. When in Rome, act like the Romans, I guess. In a certain situation, you might know that's certain behaviors required. Let's say, but maybe you feel resentful that you have to do that. Why can't you just be yourself? Emotionally, you're thinking, why can't you be yourself? I actually talked to a lot of introverts who felt that and who feel that in the American workplace, for better or for worse, is really kind of tilted towards people who are extroverted. And what if you're not? What if it's really uncomfortable for you to, I don't know, make small talk and chit chat and schmooze with your boss and talk about last night's game or whatever by the water cooler, and that's really hard for you. But then you notice that the people who can do that are the ones who are getting the assignments, the ones who are getting kind of the preferential treatment, and that's like deeply frustrating to you that you have to step outside your comfort zone. Why can't the quality of your work matter? So there are a variety of these pain points that you can experience, either in anticipation of doing something or even in the moment, but often in anticipation. In those pain points, if there's door number 1, which is, I'm going to give this a try, and door number 2 is, I think I'm going to avoid this, that can push you to door number 2.
One of the biggest lessons that I learned from my parents growing up, and there were so many, but one of the ones that resonates with me still today was the worst response that you can hear back is no. So especially when I was starting the podcast and putting out inquiries to get people on the show, I kept that in my mind. The worst thing that anybody can say is no. So why wouldn't I even try? And when I started the podcast, I was so afraid of getting on stage because I thought I would trip, which is so funny because I wasn't at all concerned about forgetting my lines. And now that has totally morphed itself. I am an introvert, Andy. I might be behind the microphone every single day, but I am an introvert. So now my concern is not about tripping. It is about forgetting what I was going to say. But I think that getting used to being behind the microphone on the podcasting side, and I've shared with you, there will be bloopers. I've shared with listeners the blooper reels. That was just part of me. And that wraps right up into what you were saying about being authentic. If I stumble over my words now and I'm on stage, I'm going to have a little bit of fun with it. Add this to the blooper reel. Have a laugh about it.
I completely agree with you, especially with, some public speaking. It's really important to be authentic. For a variety of reasons. First of all, you'll feel more natural. You'll feel more comfortable. And in some ways, you'll be your best and most natural self. And the other thing is that you're so much more you in particular, yes, but anyone is so much more relatable and more human when you kind of show your true self. And that's going to be more effective in whatever you're trying to accomplish, right? If you're trying to accomplish, I don't know, if you're trying to move and inspire people, if you're trying to convince people, whatever your kind of goal is about whatever you're doing, I think you're going to be better at achieving your goal if you're authentic.
I don't remember if we talked about it the first time we were doing this, or attempting to record, I should say. But I know listeners have heard me chat with other guests about it, is how I've been resisting getting in front of the camera, like doing live Facebook videos or getting on YouTube. And for the longest time, it was about not wanting to show whatever kid clutter is around here, or the fact that I didn't have my hair and makeup done. Listeners, I'm still struggling with that. We can't do everything. Well, no, we just can't do everything in a day. I was going to say we can try, but where's the fun in that? It's just going to be a lot of stress. One of these days, though, I will turn on the camera and push record. What is your best suggestion, Andy, as far as tackling the comfort zone or the fear of stepping outside of the comfort zone?
Yeah, no, I love the idea of thinking through an example like that, because it's exactly like those very real and small sized, challenges that people have. I'm not minimizing the challenge that it is for you to do this, but we're not talking about giving a TED talk, or we're not talking about, pitching a $2 billion business or something. We're talking about pressing record on a video chat or on a Facebook Live or something. And that's like the everyday challenge that so many people have. So I'm glad you mentioned that. What I found in my work, in my research, and I talk to a lot of people, and I also work one-on-one with people, and I'm actually in the middle of finalizing an online course, my first online course, helping people step outside their comfort zones. But what I have found is that there are three key resources or tools or whatever you want to call them. The first is conviction, that deep sense of purpose. So in your case, why is it important for you to do that? Why does that matter for you to go to video? Is it going to further your professional career and your professional development? Is it going to make an even more sort of intimate, positive connection, lasting human connection with your listeners? And is that something that's important and meaningful for you because you care about your listeners, you care about your audience, you care about making an impact, and that this is a sort of an enhanced way to do that, and so that despite the fact that it's hard, it's really worth it. Or maybe it's personal. Maybe you want to be a role model for your kids, and you're coaxing them to get outside their comfort zones, and in an age appropriate way. And this is now your challenge. And wow, wouldn't it be cool if mom was able to do this? And wouldn't my kids be proud of me? And wouldn't I be a great role model? I'm not sort of forcing that on you. I'm just saying that it can be sometimes professional, it sometimes could be personal, could be a combination, but whatever it is for you or for anyone listening in any situation, find that deep sense of purpose, find that conviction, and use it. So that's a suggestion or tool number one.
I'm happy that you brought up the deep sense of purpose, because the initial drive for me to do live videos was, quote, because everybody else is doing it. And then I realized, number one, no, not everybody else is doing it. And number two, if everybody else jumped off a bridge, that doesn't mean I would do it. So I needed to find the deeper reason. And for me, it was that connection, and it was being more transparent. And there may be a mess around here, but people need to know it's okay. We're not going to, positive productivity is not about perfection. We are all perfectly imperfect.
And how many people out there do you think also have a mess in their house?
95% of the population, I would have to think. It might just be shoved under their bed at the moment, but yeah.
Well, and you know what they say is, if you've got a bunch of kids and you have a neat house, super, super neat house, well, that's great, but it's completely understandable that you don't, because the limited time you have is the time you're spending with your kids as opposed to cleaning. That I've heard that before. Maybe that's a rationalization.
Oh no, that is totally true. But I also have the rationalization that as soon as I clean, then the tornado is just going to follow right after me.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, no question.
Yeah. So I would rather just.
That's a whole other podcast. That's a whole other podcast.
Oh, it totally is.
Right?
Best use time. Determine your ROI right there.
Yeah.
So yeah, just maybe that is a whole nother reason to start it. Talk about, best use of time and forget about, and that's another thing, hair and makeup. Is it really that important? No, because just like you just asked me, how much of the population, women, I'm going to say for this specific example, actually do work at home with a full face and hair every day? I would have to think. Listeners, I would love if you would chime in at thekimsutton.com/PP196 and let Andy and I know if you really do. Well, I don't know if Andy cares as much about this question as I do, but let me know if you do put on your hair and makeup in the morning every day before you begin work. I'm just curious.
Well, I have a daughter and a wife, so I'm at least familiar,
Yep. Yeah, but I do understand, but that's also about stepping outside the comfort zone. I remember when I was working in my last corporate job, you already brought up, Andy, about introverts in the workplace. I swear that the open office plan was created purely for extroverts. There's nothing more uncomfortable for me than be sitting in an open office plan, low walls. I can see the person across from me. Anytime I look up, I can hear every single phone conversation. Talk about uncomfortable. But I remember the first time I ever walked in without makeup on, just because I didn't feel like wearing makeup to work that day. And a lot of people won't do that because they feel like a lot of women feel like they have to have their quote face on, but it's not really their face. I know I'm getting into a whole nother deep conversation there.
No, but this actually kind of goes to my point number 2. It's actually a good segue. So I talked about conviction. The second kind of tool that I found was what I call customization, and this was really powerful. I imagine a lot of people out there, where I'm from here in Boston, Massachusetts, we have a lot of Dunkin' Donuts, and people go customize their coffee. They get their squirt of caramel or, I don't know, whipped cream or whatever it is. And this idea of customization is everywhere, making it fit just right for you. And what I found, it was so interesting. I found from talking with people and from working with people that it was very powerful that you could kind of tweak or customize your own version of stepping outside your comfort zone. So, that might be the language you use. It might be props that you bring. It might be the setting you construct. It might be the timing of a situation. So in your case with going to video, is there a time of day that suits you better? Is there a way that you can construct a setting or a particular spot at home that works best for you? Is there a simple way that you can sort of, show a little bit of the clutter, as you said, because maybe there actually is some benefit to showing a little of the clutter because it humanizes the situation. But at the same time, is there a spot you can construct for yourself where you'll feel, whatever it is for you that most comfortable, most confident, physically. Like I know someone who does a lot of video and he creates, I think he has he must have, I've never been to his apartment or his house or wherever he lives, but I see that he's got like a gray screen that he has behind him. And who knows what's behind the screen, but he has this gray screen and all you see is that gray screen, and he's got some lights, and he has these lights that you use for photography. You've probably seen like white lights and sort of those lights on the corner if you've ever seen like a professional photo shoot, and he clearly has those because I can see, because the lighting's fantastic. But you know what? When I was constructing my online course, I looked into this. Those lights are not expensive. You can find those on Amazon for not
like
that much money. Yeah, and you can get you get a couple of lights, construct a little scene, or maybe that doesn't matter to you. For instance, for me, that doesn't really matter. I do a video. I have a video podcast. I don't know if it's a podcast, a video cast, where I interview kind of thought leaders and so on video, and I just kind of do it wherever. But for other people, it's quite important. But my point here is that you can customize. Like sometimes you feel powerless in a situation outside your comfort zone, but you have more power than you think to kind of tweak it to make it work for you. I'll just tell you one quick story about this, not about your situation, but someone who read my book Reach emailed me and said, I love that idea of customization because it helped me so much. She was an introvert and actually quite shy and had a hard time making small talk at social kind of gatherings and get-togethers. And she had this epiphany after reading the section of my book on customization that what if she brought a prop to social get-togethers, and in this case her prop was a selfie stick, and what if that actually helped her make conversation? And it was amazing. She said she had the selfie stick and people would ask her what it was, and all of a sudden, by the way, you're noticing that's more conversation than she had before. She would say, oh, it's a selfie stick. They'd say, oh, cool, how does that work? Because most people have heard of a selfie stick, but they maybe don't know what it looks like or how to use it. She would then say, oh yeah, let me see your cell phone. And then all of a sudden they're having this interaction, they're engaging, they're taking a photo, maybe even sharing email and so on. And so it totally changed her experience. And that's just one little example.
I love that. I remember chatting about this the first time around and thinking how awesome that was, but I had to think about a prop. Andy, are you an introvert or an extrovert?
I think, it's interesting. I always thought I was more extroverted, but I think I've taken various personality tests just for fun, and I usually come out right in the middle, actually. Right in the middle. And I think that's probably true. I'm somewhere in the middle. If
you were going to a networking event tonight, do you have a prop you would take?
So it's different for me. Like, I guess it would depend on the context. When it depends on your stage in your career. When I was much younger, I was terrified, but now I'm, much more kind of, I guess, in my role or whatever, more senior. So it's not as uncomfortable for me. But if I were to bring a prop to a networking event, I'm not sure. I used to, I'll tell you another one. I used to bring, when I did public speaking and I was very uncomfortable much earlier in my career, I would wear a special ring. I might have told you about this the first time, I forget. It was a ring that the stone in the ring was a stone that my great uncle had found in World War II on the beaches of the South Pacific when he was in the Navy. And he had it made into a ring, and it's a cool ring. And I always admired it, and eventually I inherited it. And it always kind of meant courage to me because of how he acquired the stone. And I would wear that ring when I went to do public speaking early on. Every single time I would wear it because it sort of had that little teeny boost of courage for me. I mean, it didn't like massively transform my experience, but it was like a little secret that I had and a little feeling I had when I looked at it. And that little boost helped me. So that's an example. That's a prop.
I love that. Actually, you just helped me with my prop. Thank you. But I've had this little fish coin for about the last 7 years. It is directly related to my faith, but on the back it says, "Blessed is the man who trusts in the Lord," Jeremiah 17:7. And I carried it around for probably the first year that I had it everywhere I went. And let me tell you, listeners, things in my house that are small like this do not usually last the test of time. I mean, my wedding band and my engagement ring are on my finger because I don't take them off. But if I did take them off, I can guarantee you that 2 little girls would quickly find a new home for them. So the fact that I actually still have this coin, and I was actually just looking at it yesterday, and just having that in my hand, if I was up on stage, I know it would give me that little boost of confidence, Yeah.
There you go.
Thank you. I have one last question for you. Let's say you were 14, a freshman in high school. Again, I know, very difficult time for a lot of us. But you had the opportunity to speak to a whole bunch of shy kids. Is there any one specific piece of advice that you would give them?
Gosh, it's a really hard question. I would want a 14-year-old to try to learn to be comfortable in their own skin. that I think is a really important thing for teenagers, and it's also a really hard thing. And I don't know. I have a 13-year-old, so I don't know what my piece of advice would be. I'll tell you what my piece of advice to parents would be, though, would be to really get to know your kid, to try to really understand your kid, and to try to not, impose your own wishes, your own dreams, your own preferences on your kid, but really get to know that kid, and hopefully have your kid know that you're trying to get to know them. And I think that's kind of the key leverage point, I think, as opposed to just I don't think they'd listen to me anyways if I went over and talked to a bunch of 14-year-olds.
Andy, I love that. I mean, I've seen all the difference there actually with just my own kids, getting to know them, and they can talk to me about anything. And I do see how it has impacted, maybe not impacted, but I can see the difference in how they act in school versus how I acted or how their dad acted. I sometimes wonder how they can be my kids.
Your kids do surprise
Constantly.
You, don't
they? If they were here every second, they would be surprising me every second. Andy, this has been an awesome encore chat for the two of us. And I'm so thankful that you came back and gave it another shot with my technology issues. So thank you.
Thanks for having me back. I really enjoyed it the first time, and I did this time, and it was really, really fun to connect with you.
Can you share with listeners where they can find you online and connect and get to know more about you?
Sure. Yeah. I have a website. It's www.andymolinsky.com, ANDYMOLINSKY.com. And I've got lots of, articles. And so I write, as I mentioned before, for the Harvard Business Review and Psychology Today and Inc.com. And I've got all sorts of free articles and videos and quizzes and all sorts of stuff on there. It was kind of the website that I kind of built it to be the kind of place I would want to visit. So, all my social is there too, like, LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter, and my email as well. So I'd love to hear from people. And I also have a newsletter that I put out, and I try to put some of my very best stuff in there, and, feel free to sign up. And yeah, I love to connect with people.
Talk about stepping outside the comfort zone. I wasn't planning on keeping on going, but I love how you said, you're building the website that you would want to go to.
Yeah.
That's something that a lot of people don't, because they're looking at everything else. Well, and circling back to what I said earlier, they build a site because it's what everybody else is building, and they model the example. Listeners, do what resonates with you and what you would want to visit. And I guarantee, and I'm sure Andy feels the same way, that there will be other people who resonate with it just that much more.
Absolutely.
Andy, do you have a last piece of advice or a golden nugget that you can offer to listeners before we wrap this up?
I think about comfort zones, stepping outside your comfort zone. It's not rocket science. It's also not as easy as just saying, oh yeah, I'm going to take the leap, right? We all know that, but it's not rocket science either. And that's why I wrote this book. And that's why I do the work I do, to try to give people a real sensible, evidence-based, in other words, from research, but sensible roadmap for developing the courage and capacity to do it. So that would be my parting advice.